Okay, let's unpack this because, you hear so much about ETFs and maybe individual traders moving the Bitcoin needle, but something really interesting seems to have happened this year.
Yeah,
It looks like businesses have, well, kind of quietly become the biggest buyers out there.
absolutely. It's like, forget the usual headlines for a moment. This deep dive is really all about this significant shift,
Mm,
corporations loading up on Bitcoin in a big way.
right.
And that could have some serious implications down the line.
Exactly. And we've got some pretty compelling research to look at. It's highlighted by River. They're a Bitcoin investment firm.
Mhm.
Their report just came out May 12th, 2025. Plus, we're pulling in some extra context from Bitwise and CryptoQuant, too, just to, get the full picture.
Good idea.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Figure out who these corporate buyers are, just how much Bitcoin they're actually acquiring, and crucially, what impact this might have on Bitcoin supply and demand.
Sounds good.
Ready to get into it?
Definitely. Let's start with the scale, maybe. Just how significant is this corporate buying, really?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so according to River's data, corporations are actually the top net buyers of Bitcoin in 2025.
Net buyers. Okay, so buying more than selling.
Exactly. And they're doing this at a higher rate than both the ETFs,
Mm-hmm.
the ones everyone talks about, and individual investors.
And the scale, the actual numbers are pretty eye-opening, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. River reports that total corporate Bitcoin holdings have jumped by a massive 157,000 Bitcoin just this year.
157,000. Wow. What's that in dollar terms, roughly?
At today's prices, you're looking at something like $16 billion.
$16 billion.
Yeah. But here's what I find really interesting. It's not just, the big tech giants or a couple of well-known names. River specifically points out that businesses across all industries are starting to get involved.
Across all industries. That's key, isn't it? It's not just a niche thing anymore.
That widespread adoption is, I think, a really crucial insight. And when you look at the growth, like year over year, it's even more striking. River noted a 154% increase in business ownership of Bitcoin since just 2024.
154%. So more than doubled in a year.
Pretty much. Think about it. For every one business holding Bitcoin last year, now there are, more than two. That really signals a fundamental shift, in how businesses are viewing this asset.
Okay, so who are we talking about then? Who are the main players behind this buying spree? We all know Michael Saylor's firm, Strategy. They're big believers.
Oh, definitely.
But are they the whole story here?
Well, they're a huge part of the story, no doubt, but not the whole thing.
Yeah.
River's data shows Strategy accounts for, a significant chunk, 77% of that corporate growth this year.
77%.
Yeah, and their recent purchase really underlines it, 13,390 Bitcoin for $1.34 billion.
It's a serious commitment. $1.34 billion. Makes you wonder about the discussions inside that boardroom.
Doesn't it? But like you said, they aren't alone.
Yeah.
Metaplanet is another notable one. Metaplanet, right.
Their recent buy, 12,241 Bitcoin, actually puts their total holdings above even El Salvador's.
Above El Salvador. Wow. Considering El Salvador made it legal tender, that is quite a statement.
It is. And it's not just about the companies already in the game buying more. We're seeing totally new players jump in.
Oh, really? Like who?
Well, Bitwise reported that in just the first quarter of 2025, at least 12 public companies bought Bitcoin for the very first time.
12 new public companies in Q1 alone.
Yeah. Names like Rumble, the video platform,
Mm-hmm.
and Mingxing, which is a construction firm in Hong Kong. Also, HK Asia Holdings Limited, an investment firm, also based in Hong Kong.
Okay, so a real mix then. Early adopters doubling down and completely new businesses coming in from different sectors, different parts of the world. So what kinds of businesses are we mostly seeing adding Bitcoin? Is there a pattern?
River actually gave a sector breakdown for their clients, and it's quite diverse. Finance and investment firms, they lead, about 35.7%.
Makes sense. Yeah. But tech firms aren't far behind, 16.8%.
Yeah.
And then professional and consulting companies are right there too, 16.5%.
Okay, so finance, tech, consulting.
But the rest, the remainder, it comes from a really wide range. Real estate, nonprofits, consumer goods, industrial stuff, healthcare, even energy, agriculture, and transportation companies.
Wow.
It really just underlines how Bitcoin's appeal seems to be broadening out, way beyond just tech or finance.
Okay, right. Let's put this corporate buying into context then. How does it stack up against, the other big players in the Bitcoin world, the ETFs, governments?
Yeah, that comparison is crucial, I think, for understanding the bigger market dynamics.
Yeah.
So look at the net growth this year. Corporations, like we said, added 157,000 BTC.
Yeah.
ETFs, which got so much press, right? Their net growth was 49,000 BTC.
49,000, so significantly less than corporations.
Way less. And governments, they increased their holdings by about 19,000 BTC.
Okay, so 157K for core, 49K for ETFs, 19K for governments. Corporations are really out front.
Substantially outbuying both ETFs and governments. Yeah. But there's another really interesting piece to this puzzle, or maybe a contrasting piece.
Oh yeah, what's that?
There is, and it's pretty significant. Rivers research also pointed out a substantial decline in Bitcoin holdings by retail traders, individuals.
That decline, how much?
A decrease of 247,000 BTC this year.
Whoa, 247,000 decrease for retail, while corporations added 157,000.
Exactly. So it paints this picture where the balance of Bitcoin ownership might actually be shifting away from individuals perhaps and more towards these larger corporate entities.
That's a pretty dramatic potential shift in who actually holds Bitcoin. So, okay, what does all this mean for the basics, the economics of Bitcoin? We always hear about the finite supply.
Exactly. That's fundamental. Bitcoin has that hard cap, 21 million coins. That's it. And right now, miners are creating about 450 new coins each day.
450 a day.
Right. So when you get this kind of significant sustained buying pressure from corporations like we're seeing now,
right,
it starts to really squeeze that limited new supply.
And that's where we start hearing talk about Bitcoin potentially becoming, what, deflationary. Is that right?
Precisely, yeah. The CEO of CryptoQuant, Ki-Young Ju, he observed that strategy, just strategy alone, is basically accumulating Bitcoin faster.
Faster than
the total number of new Bitcoin being produced by all the miners combined.
Wow. Just one company buying faster than the entire network creates new coins.
That's what his analysis suggests. And he figures this could lead to a deflationary annual rate for Bitcoin, maybe around minus 2.3%.
Minus 2.3%.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
The amount of new Bitcoin hitting the market is becoming less than the amount being soaked up, particularly by these big corporate buyers. It just reduces the supply available out there on exchanges.
Okay, so demand, at least from this sector, is actually outpacing the creation of new Bitcoin. That feels like a really powerful dynamic.
It is. It really is. There's an author, Adam Livingston, who used this pretty compelling analogy. He suggested that Strategy's aggressive buying is kind of synthetically halving Bitcoin.
Synthetically halving? What does that mean?
Well, you know how a Bitcoin halving event cuts the miner reward, slowing down new supply creation?
Right. Happens every 4 years or so.
Yeah. So what Adam is suggesting is that this intense buying pressure, this demand, is having a similar effect on the available supply. It's drastically reducing what's readily out there to buy, almost as if a halving had happened purely because of demand soaking everything up.
Huh. So the demand itself is acting like a brake on available supply, not just the mining protocol.
Kind of, yeah. It's creating scarcity in a different way.
Okay, wow. Let's try and bring this all together one last time then. The core insight here seems to be that businesses, and not just a few famous ones, but companies across lots of different sectors, have really emerged as a major, maybe the major driving force in the Bitcoin market this year.
Yeah, that sums it up well.
They're buying Bitcoin faster than the ETFs everyone was focused on, and it stands in really stark contrast to what looks like decreasing holdings among retail investors. So the balance of power, who holds the Bitcoin, it might be fundamentally shifting.
That's a very accurate summary, I think. We're definitely witnessing a notable increase in institutional adoption.
Yeah.
And like you said, not just from the usual financial firms, but from this diverse range of operating businesses. Companies that are deciding there's potential value in holding Bitcoin on their actual balance sheets.
Right. And considering this, this growing corporate embrace combined with Bitcoin's built-in scarcity, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What kind of long-term effects could this trend have on Bitcoin's role, maybe, in the wider financial world? As more and more businesses decide, yeah, we need some Bitcoin in our treasury, how are those dynamics between the big institutions and individual investors going to keep evolving?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It definitely feels like a really significant development. Lots of potential downstream effects for you, the listener, to think about.